I love Elvis, but Priscilla said to me, well, if it was up to me, I would say yes.
What if I told you one of the greatest British music legends was secretly haunted by a man he never even met? And that man was Elvis Presley. When we think of Elvis Presley, we think of the king, the legend, the hips, the voice, the chaos, the glory. But for one young man in post-war Britain, Elvis wasn't just a star, he was something far more personal. Cliff Richard, Britain's very first rock icon, has finally broken his silence about the man who shaped his soul, his sound, and even his deepest regrets. And what he reveals? It's raw, it's real, and it will change the way you see both legends forever. Imagine being a teenager in gray post-war England, no internet, no MTV, no YouTube, just a crackly radio, a head full of dreams, and then suddenly a voice comes through the static. That voice? Elvis Presley. Cliff Richard remembers it like a lightning strike to the chest. It was like time stopped. I had never heard anything like it. That voice, it had swagger, pain, fire. It wasn't just music, it was dangerous. Cliff wasn't alone in loving Elvis, but for him, it was different. It was obsession. It was awakening. He wasn't just a fan, so he was possessed. And from that moment on, the shy kid from the outskirts of London didn't want to be just another boy listening to the radio. He wanted to be the voice on the other end. He wanted to become Elvis, and not just in sound, in everything. Crazy how one voice can flip someone's whole life, right? If you're still here, you're built different. Stick around, it only gets deeper. When Cliff Richard finally burst onto the scene in 1958 with Move It, the British press didn't even hesitate. They had their headline ready. Britain's Elvis has arrived. He had the look, the guitar, the sneer, and yeah, he even had the screaming girls. But what people didn't see was the pressure that title came with. Being called Britain's Elvis sounds like a dream, until you realize it's a prison. Cliff was only 18, barely out of school. And suddenly he wasn't just expected to be good, he was expected to be legendary. Every stage I stepped on, it wasn't just me up there, Cliff said. It was the ghost of Elvis, and everyone watching expected me to be him. The comparisons were endless. The hips, the voice, the swagger, but no one stopped to ask Cliff how it felt. And while the world was watching him rise, Cliff was silently cracking under the weight of someone else's crown. It was an honor, but it was also a trap. He couldn't date freely, he couldn't go anywhere without paparazzi, and no matter how many records he sold, people still whispered, he's just a copy of Elvis. But what they didn't know, and what Cliff never admitted until now, is that, deep down, he didn't want to copy Elvis, he wanted to be him. Here's where it gets painfully real. Cliff Richard wasn't just influenced by Elvis, he idolized him. He studied the way Elvis moved, sang, stood, even how he breathed between lyrics. And for years, there was just one thing Cliff wanted more than anything else, more than a #1 hit, more than a sold-out tour, more than fame. He wanted to meet Elvis Presley, and it almost happened. Behind the scenes, Cliff's team had been quietly working on arranging the ultimate moment, a private meeting between the king of rock and roll and the boy who'd built his entire career in his shadow. According to Cliff, the plan was already in motion. Schedules were lining up. People were making calls. This wasn't fan fiction. This was happening. Until suddenly, it wasn't. Something fell through, Cliff said, and then he was gone. Elvis died in 1970, and Cliff never got the chance to meet him. Just like that, the dream vanished. The man who had given him purpose, the voice that made his heart beat faster when he was 17, was dead. And Cliff, he was left with a hole that no career milestone could ever fill. It felt like I lost a brother I'd never met, he said. A spiritual brother, an artistic twin. And that's the kind of grief that never really goes away. It lingers, it shadows every success. Because no matter how far Cliff soared, he knew that one moment, that meeting, was the one thing fate denied him. This is the part that nobody saw coming. While the world was obsessed with Elvis's style, scandals, and stardom, Cliff Richard felt something much deeper. A connection, not just to the performer, but to the person behind the myth. People remember the hips, the hair, the wild stage presence, Cliff said. But what I felt was someone who was lost, someone like me. For the first time publicly, Cliff admitted something deeply personal. He saw himself in Elvis. Not the fame, not the fans, but the spiritual confusion underneath it all. Because behind the rhinestones and the headlines, Elvis Presley was someone wrestling with his soul, searching, longing, questioning everything. There was a yearning in Elvis. You could hear it in his voice if you listened closely, Cliff revealed, and I've always felt that too. Cliff connected with the lonely version of Elvis, the one who wanted more than money or fame. Both men were raised in religious homes. Both had complicated relationships with identity, with pressure, with the spotlight, and both used music as a way to make sense of the chaos. But here's the wild twist. Cliff walked away from the wild parties. He chose a life of discipline, faith, and control. Elvis didn't. And maybe that's why Cliff always felt that strange pull, like he was watching another version of himself, one that took a darker path. I think he was trying to find peace, Cliff said softly. And that's what makes it so tragic, because I don't think he ever truly found it. That line hit like a punch to the gut, because it wasn't just admiration, it was empathy, it was grief, and maybe, deep down, it was guilt. Because Cliff got to grow old, he got to heal, he got to reflect. Elvis never did. Everyone sees the spotlight. No one sees what it cost to stand in it. Cliff Richard may have looked like the golden boy of British pop, but behind the perfectly polished smile was a young man carrying a secret most pop stars never admit. He gave up love to chase a dream. At just 21, when most people are falling in love for the first time, Cliff was writing a devastating 3-page letter to the woman he thought he might marry, Australian dancer Delia Wicks. She was beautiful, kind, and deeply in love with him. And Cliff, he couldn't be with her. Why? Because he chose music over marriage, fame over a future, and the way he said it, brutal in its honesty. Being a pop singer, he wrote, I have to give up one priceless thing, the right to any lasting relationship with any special girl. Let that sink in. He wasn't breaking up because he stopped loving her. He was breaking up because he knew that his life, under the tours, the cameras, the pressure, would destroy the relationship anyway. And here's the part no one talks about. That letter, Delia kept it until the day she died. Her brother later revealed that the breakup shattered her. She never stopped caring about Cliff. He was a very pleasant man, her brother said. There were no hard feelings, just sadness. This wasn't tabloid drama, this was real heartbreak, the kind that lasts decades. And Cliff, he carried that guilt, quietly, constantly, because no matter how many records he sold or how many headlines he made, he knew he had broken something beautiful. That letter hit hard. If you've ever let go of someone you didn't want to lose, yeah, you're gonna feel the rest of this one. Let's keep going. Now here's where the story gets even heavier, and honestly kind of heartbreaking. That letter to Delia, it wasn't the last. Over the years, Cliff found himself caught in the same tragic pattern again and again, almost in love, almost ready, almost forever, but never quite. There was English actress Una Stubbs, charming, bright, everything Cliff could have wanted. But it fizzled before it really began. Then dancer Jackie Irving. The two were practically inseparable. Friends thought she was the one. Cliff even called her utterly beautiful. But again, it ended. Later came tennis champion Sue Barker. That relationship made headlines. Photos of them holding hands at Wimbledon set off a media frenzy. There were whispers of an engagement. Cliff even said in an interview, I'm seeing Sue. She's the only girl I want to see right now. If marriage comes, I'll relish it. Fans were sure it was finally happening, but months later he walked it back. It's not vital to get married, he said. It's not vital to be a father. I would like to settle down, but it's not urgent. Years later, he admitted something that stopped people cold. I thought I loved her enough to marry her, but I didn't. That honesty, brutal, rare, human, and perhaps the saddest part, he wasn't cold, he wasn't careless, he just knew, deep down, that he couldn't give anyone his whole heart, because too much of it was owned by something else. Music, family, duty, loss. The emotional wreckage left by his father's death when Cliff was only 21, the responsibility of supporting his mother and sisters, the years of hiding his heartbreak to keep his image intact. It all added up, and over time, Cliff Richard became a master of letting go, not because he wanted to, but because he thought he had to. "I've had a few false alarms," Cliff once said. "I've been in love, but being an artist consumes a lot of time. Marriage is a big commitment. What do you do when you're the man everyone loves, but you can't let anyone truly love you? That's not fame. That's a prison. A quiet one, with gold records on the walls." Cliff Richard never got to say goodbye to Elvis, but with this moment, with these words, he finally has two legends, one legacy, and one truth that echoes through time. Even icons have heroes. If you felt that, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started.